U.S. Capitol tonight, sitting down with New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand today. So, Tom, where does she stand on all this? What are you hearing?
Well, Greg, she is backing Joe Biden right now, and that aligns with the conversation I had with her a few months ago, back in January. Of course, that's months before that presidential debate a couple weeks ago now. She says it is still Joe Biden's time, and that in 4 years from now, that is when younger candidates can take over. Don't forget, it was more than 4 years ago now that she ran against Joe Biden in that presidential Democratic primary before dropping out. Kirsten Gillibrand, 57 years old, just some context there. In the meantime, she is now backing Joe Biden because she's pointing to his record infrastructure bill, semiconductor manufacturing, lowering prescription drug prices, believing he can do more like that in the next 4 years.
I believe that President Biden is the best person to defeat Donald Trump. And he is older, but I would rather be 81 and honest and hardworking and do good things than have 88 indictments and be a convicted criminal, because that's what we have.
Now, with that in mind, we asked Congressman Mark Molinaro, the Republican, this yesterday, should Donald Trump recuse himself from his campaign because of the felony conviction, along with some of those other legal issues. Kirsten Gillibrand said she never believes that Donald Trump was qualified for president and that he is, quote, disassociated from reality. Well, back to reality here at the U.S. Capitol. Right now, the NATO summit underway. President Biden speaking at that, touting some of the initiatives that he has influenced at this time as the focus continues to be on aid to Ukraine and Israel. As for what Senator Gillibrand thinks about that, she says Israel has a right to exist and protect its border from terrorists, but is urging Benjamin Netanyahu to pivot towards a regional defense alliance with Saudi Arabia, collaborating with other countries against terrorist groups like Hamas or Hezbollah.
Together they can defeat Hamas. I don't think they can bomb their way to the last 500 terrorists that are in Gaza. I think the better approach is to create this alliance and then over the next decade defeat Hamas, rebuild Gaza, rebuild a Palestinian state.
You know, I asked her if the death toll in Gaza was a reason for her believing that. She also pointed to the United States and struggling and battling terrorism in places like Afghanistan and Iraq, and said Israel needs to take a different approach even than that. Reporting live here from the U.S. Capitol, Tom Eschen, CBS 6 News. Back to you, Greg.
All right, thank you so much, Tom. You have been there on the front lines now for a couple of days. How much is there to these reported calls for Joe Biden to step aside, and how important are the congressional leaders in that decision?
Yeah, Greg, we've heard from a handful of Democrats publicly, congressionally, that say that Joe Biden needs to step aside. But mainly when it comes to the leadership and the majority of those Democrats, they are supporting Joe Biden at this time. We haven't heard anyone in the Senate actually speak out against Joe Biden and what he is doing in planning for the next few years. We hear from Chuck Schumer today on that. Here's what he had to say.
Are you confident that President Biden has what it takes to win in November and serve the next 4 years?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
There might be a challenge at the convention, and if there is there the ability to throw out the virtual nomination?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Must seriously consider the best way to preserve his legacy. Do you agree with her sentiment?
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.